Well, it's now 11 GMT. That's just past 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Gaza, where Israel is continuing its bombardment and ground incursion. Israeli jets and artillery have been hitting residential buildings and refugee camps in the Strip, including in southern Gaza, where Israel had previously told Palestinians to flee. Intense fighting is now underway between Israeli forces and Palestinian fighters inside Gaza City. And the military wing of Hamas has fired a large barrage of rockets, as you can see, towards Israel. Israeli military officials say some 250 rockets have been launched since Friday morning. Baig begins our coverage.
Children are meant to play in the dirt. But in Gaza, it's their shroud. The bombing has continued in areas that the Israeli military said were safe.
I was asleep. I woke up. I found myself under the rubble. I didn't find anything. All around me was logs and rocks. I tried to move, but I couldn't because there were a lot of rocks. I kept screaming and calling for the people. Men came and carried me. They put me in the ambulance.
Civil defense teams frantically traverse narrow streets of Khan Younis in the south. Palestinians' homes and lives continue to be ripped apart. Many have already moved from the north to the south, making these areas even more densely populated than before.
When the civil defense teams came, they were confronted by an unimaginable scene, a residential area consisting of more than 50 houses, as per the testimonies of the civilians and residents, stating that this square was highly populated by residents and internally displaced people. It was targeted by more than 10 bombs launched by Israeli occupation forces. We're talking here about hundreds killed.
The ceasefire has ended with more bloodshed in Gaza. There's fewer hospitals operating, fewer emergency vehicles, and if this rate of killing continues, fewer Palestinians left in the Gaza Strip. Baig, Al Jazeera.
Well, Israel's army has issued new orders to further displace people in southern Gaza, an area that was already declared safe. Israel says it's now dividing the entire Gaza Strip into zones, as you can see, to let people know which areas to leave. It's now saying that these districts that you can see here in yellow, in the town of Khan Younis, that's the largest city in the south, they'll become areas with heavy fighting. Israel is ordering people to rather move to these 3 refugee camps here. Now, the wording of the displacement leaflet suggests that the survival of Palestinians is now their own responsibility. Let's take a look at the situation on the ground. After Israel isolated Gaza City up in the north, its troops have been pushing further south. Along the Strip's main artery, you can see it there in black, that's the Salah al-Din road. We have reports that there's been fighting all the way down here in Al-Qarara. That's just about 5 kilometers northeast of Khan Younis. Now, while Israel is telling Palestinians in Khan Younis to move further south towards Rafah, as you can see there on the border with Egypt, it's also been shelling the main roads leading to that area. Now, one of the few remaining options to travel between Gaza's north and south is that black coastal road there, the Al-Rashid road. But Israeli military vessels along the Mediterranean coastline have direct line of fire over that road, and they've been shooting at vehicles travelling along it. Well, let's get more now from the ground in Gaza. We can speak to Hani Mahmoud. He's in Khan Younis in the southern Gaza Strip. Hani, are people following these evacuation orders? I mean, in practical terms, can they?
Well, so far it's very difficult to follow these instructions, given that the areas that have been ordered to evacuate are very, very densely populated areas. And then even when we look at the fact that if people wanted to follow these instructions and move to the designated areas, we look at a very difficult situations on the ground in terms of roads and infrastructure. For example, Salah ad-Din road has been destroyed. The very area that connects the central part with the southern part of Khan Younis, it has been destroyed. So people who are inside the central part are unable to evacuate, even though the central part is under heavy bombardment. And earlier this week, earlier of last week, they were ordered to evacuate to some new designated areas. But here, people in Khan Younis city, particularly at the eastern side of Khan Younis, the fact that the entire area has been divided into small zones, blocks, numbered blocks, very close to each other, very dense in terms of population, It's very hard to move from one block to another to get to your safe area without passing through an already marked block that is dangerous. So the likelihood of dying in another block while moving to a safe area supposedly is very, very high. In addition, that the Israeli narrative is not well received here. And because of the lack of faith and trust in what the Israeli military is doing. Now, for the world watching this map, they might believe that, okay, the Israeli military is doing its best to have people avoiding being bombed. But the fact on the ground for someone who is unfamiliar with the Gaza Strip and its geography and the density of the population, it's very difficult here. It's very difficult for people to move from one place to another. And even the designated new areas are a small pocket of sand areas that lacks necessities in terms of water supplies, food supplies, transportation. People cannot get there easily. Now, not only the road between the central part and the southern part has been destroyed, but also between Khan Younis and Rafah, the very area that people were told to move to has also been destroyed. So people end up walking to those areas. It takes very long time, unable to carry all of their belongings. Some of them, this is their third time of evacuation to the supposedly safe areas. The situations on the ground are very, very difficult. Some people are making the decision of staying where they are because they say there's no difference of dying here or elsewhere in Gaza.
Hani, you're describing an ever-shrinking space for people, and you mentioned there how difficult it is for people to get supplies, especially as they're being crammed increasingly into these areas. How are people holding up, especially now that it seems that aid is being restricted again too?
Well, sadly, people are going more hungry right now and more thirsty as there's no access to clean water to drink. People are resorting to either salty water coming directly from the sea or contaminated water that has already proven to be very unhealthy and very bad for human consumption. And we've seen example of cases of a spread of infectious diseases as reported by the WHO, and here at local medical teams report about cases of new diseases, the spread of infectious diseases as a result of consuming contaminated water. But in terms of other supplies, it's very, very difficult. Whatever is available here in the southern part was barely enough, even with the entrance of a humanitarian aid, was barely enough for the resident of the southern part. But with 1.5 million people, a little over than this, of evacuees and displaced, the needs are more dire. People tend, when they are displaced, to consume more and to be in need of more supplies compared to time when they are busy and going through their day-to-day activities. Right now, there is a need for more of those humanitarian aid trucks. But since the end of the ceasefire and the blocks that have been placed on the entrance of the seas on humanitarian aid, things started to get very difficult. So far, there are three elements we should consider. People haven't been at work for the past period. Today is the 56 days of the war, no work, no payroll. People lack the necessary cash. Markets are empty. Even if you have the flow of cash available, it's hard to find the basic needs that you want from the market. And if it's found, the prices are double, and for some items it has tripled beyond the financial capabilities of the vast majority of the people here in the southern part or in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Let's just remind everyone, Gaza Strip has been under a blockade for the past 16 years. Already people are in poverty, in extreme needs of support and humanitarian aid, and in the past there were multiple hundreds of NGOs helping and supporting the population. Now, out of the picture, the situations are very difficult, and there is an immediate need for an intervention to save what's remaining of this society.
Hani Mahmoud there, reporting for us live from the ground in Khan Younis in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. Thank you, Hani.